What's going on, guys? It's the Skylander dude, and I am back working on more Lost Islands Alter Ego customs. It has been years since I've done a Lost Islands custom, and I've been wanting to finish the Alter Ego set ever since. So in this episode, we are actually working on 2 custom figures for one video. We are working on Lucky Boomer and Buddy Wrecking Ball. I'm starting first on Lucky Boomer, and I'm shaving down his legs because if you know Boomer, you know his beard and his legs are connected. He's got hair all over those legs. But Lucky Boomer is actually wearing pants, so I'm going to be shaving down his legs just a little bit to give myself a little bit of a base to build clay on top of and make it nice and smooth, make it look like he's actually wearing pants, doesn't just have hair all over his legs. And I also cut off his backpack and dynamite he was holding because Lucky Boomer is not a violent guy. He holds clovers instead of dynamite. So now I'm taking some thin pieces of clay and building them up on his legs just to smoothen things out to make it look consistent like he's actually wearing pants. And I'll also go into his feet and build up some clay there because I unfortunately had to cut off his toes to make room for the leprechaun shoes that Lucky Boomer wears. So I'll build that up, make it nice and smooth. I'll add a heel where you can actually see his foot lifting off the ground. And then I'll add buckles to each of the shoes. I then went in to clean up the hands a little bit from when I cut off the dynamite just to make them nice and smooth and look like a closed fist. I then worked on his leprechaun hat. I first built that up with tinfoil just to give myself a little bit of a base and also make it lighter so it's not a solid block of clay. So I covered that with clay and then made the brim on a flat piece of tinfoil that I could use the table to make it nice and flat. And then I filled a little strip around the bottom just like it has on the actual hat. And then I tackled the Tech Element logo. Matching the Tech Element symbol was pretty tough here. I had to get each individual piece of that gear looking nice and geometric. But then I also rolled together some small pieces of clay that I'm going to stick through the whole of the Tech Element logo and glue to the hat to make it look like they're actually suspended and floating there like it is on the model of the real character. But then I worked on making the pot of gold that he has on his back. It's actually very hard to even tell that he's wearing a pot of gold on his back, but you can just barely see it in some artwork. Or on a GIF that I found online. You can see just a tiny bit of the pot of gold, so I kind of had to wing it and guess what it would look like. There's not a good shot of Lucky Boomer's back, so I came up with that pot of gold. And then I worked on the clover. He has 1 clover in his hand, so I put together a 3-leaf clover. Not sure why it wasn't a 4-leaf if he's Lucky Boomer, but whatever, put that together just so I can glue that on at the end. But then I took a break from Lucky Boomer and moved on to Buddy Wrecking Ball. Of course, he has these giant petals that I have to make out of clay, and so I just started by making a rough shape so I can know how much clay I need for 1 petal, and then sort of rolled out 5 evenly shaped balls so all the petals would come out to be the same size. Then I took 2 flat pieces of plexiglass and flattened each of the balls of clay into petal forms to make them nice and uniform. Then to capture that curvature on the petals for when they were baking, I made this little rough piece of tinfoil just to have the petals sort of drape over top of it so when they were baking they didn't just fold under the pressure and come out flat. So that kept their shape in the oven. And then I actually went back and sort of cut them down because they were a little bit big, made the petal a little bit thinner, and I left some extra clay on the bottom of the petals. So once I baked it, I would go back and sort of shave it down to match it up with the back of Wrecking Ball because it was kind of hard to see where I wanted the petals to end while the clay was soft. So I did that once it was baked. So you can see them here once I shaved down the petals, and now they'll all line up evenly with the Wrecking Ball's back. Also, 2 of the petals did separate after being baked in the oven, but that's actually fine. It actually worked out better. It was easier to paint, and then I could just glue them all together at the end. But here's how Lucky Boomer came out of the oven. You can see his pants and his shoes are all nice and smooth. Also smoothed out his back to make room for the pot of gold. And then here's that pot of gold once it was baked, and also his leprechaun hat. I made sure to press it into his head a little bit before I baked it just so it has little indents of his eyebrows so it sits nice and flush. And then here's a little piece of gear that I made and the small little bits of clay that I rolled that will go inside the gear and they'll be glued to the hat just again to make it look like they're actually floating in space. And finally, the 3-leaf clover here, which I also made a stem for that I'll glue on separately to his hand. But then I went into his hat and started gluing together the gear before I painted it because I thought it'd be easier to paint it once it was all connected. And so I cut down those little tubes of clay that I rolled and I will stick them through the gear with some tweezers and glue them to the hat. But that is all the clay work completed. It is time to paint these figures. I started first with Buddy Wrecking Ball with this pink. He's a very vibrant pink just on the top half of the figure. So I went and painted the entire face and top portion with this pink. It took me quite a few coats to get that nice vibrant pink color, but it helped that I had Wrecking Ball separated from his base already so I could just take it off and get into those hard to reach areas. Once I was happy with the first coat of pink, I went in with a lighter pink and just dry brushed the top of the scales to sort of bring out the deep crevices with that darker pink. And also, Buddy Wrecking Ball does have a slight variation in the pink color used on his scales, so this helped to match the artwork better. Then I moved on to painting Lucky Boomer. I first mixed together this darker green that I used for his pants and his hat. Then I went in with black to paint his shoes completely black, the straps around his arms from his old backpack, then also the cauldron just to make it a nice consistent black. And the strip around his hat also was black, so I painted that as well. I was very careful not to go over the lines and keep it nice and clean. Then I switched back to Buddy Wrecking Ball. There's a lot of back and forth here, mixing between the two customs, but I put together this darker gray with a little bit of brown to match the color of the inside of his mouth. I didn't really need to paint this, but I thought just to keep it nice with cleaner lines, because his tongue, or the old red of his tongue, sort of bled onto the roof of his mouth from the factory. So I decided to repaint that just to give myself a better base for when I went in and painted the tongue green, which I didn't do yet. I then mixed together some brown to use on the straps for Lucky Boomer's shoes. Then I went in with green on the Buddy Wrecking Ball for his bottom half, his tongue, and also his little things on the top of his head. I don't know what to call them. Whatever those are, I painted those green as well. Then I went back to Lucky Boomer and made a nice vibrant orange that I went in to paint his beard with because he's a little more Irish than the original Boomer. So I wanted that orange in his beard to come out more. Then to help give myself a better grip on these figures when I finished up the painting, I actually glued them to their bases. I don't usually do this until the very end, but there was a lot of details that I wanted to paint next, and I wanted to have a good base to hold on to the figure. So that's what I did. I glued together both the figures to the base, then also the pot of gold to the back of Boomer. Then I went in with white to give Wrecking Ball some nice bright white chompers he got there, and also painted his top row of teeth, which was not painted on the original Wrecking Ball figure. Then I worked with gold on Lucky Boomer. I painted the tech element symbol on his hat, the pieces of gold inside of his pot of gold. Then I painted his hands completely gold as well, and also the buckles. The buckles were gold as well. A lot of gold on this figure, which makes sense. Then I mixed together a lighter yellow to better match the color used for the spikes on the back of Wrecking Ball and also the petals. Didn't want it to be a super bright yellow, so I mixed some white up in there to make it a nice, more pastel color. Then I glued together the petals onto Buddy Wrecking Ball, right where the green and pink met on his back. Then I also glued together the clover into his hand as well as the stem, and Lucky Boomer's hat. Then I went back into Buddy Wrecking Ball and dry brushed some light pink onto the very tips of the petals, just like the actual character has in the game. And then after some finishing touches, the customs were finished. First up, here is the Lucky Boomer figure. And then here's the finished Buddy Wrecking Ball custom. I hope you guys enjoyed this return of the Lost Islands customs, and let me know in the comments which alter ego figure you'd like to see me make a custom of next. But thank you guys so much for watching. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and comment. Peace.